What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award winning Dr. Vibe Show, the home of Epic Conversations. And I'm the host of Epic Conversations, 2018 Innovation Award winner, 2020 Best Podcast News Award winner given out by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. I also co host and co produce the only online show in the world for dads, fathers, and male caregivers, sponsored by Dove Plus Care. And being part of that movement, the team I'm a part of has reached out to over 400,000 dads, fathers, and male caregivers around the world. And as always, I like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. And you are watching Black Canada Talking, where, well, Cesar Ndema-Moussa gives his takes and POVs from a Black Canadian view on local stories, provincial stories, national stories, international stories. So without further ado, Cesar, how are you, sir?
Vibe, brothers, sisters, and allies, thank you for having me. I'm okay. A long 4 hour drive to come here in Northern Ontario for work. But yes, I'm glad I
Yes.
made it safely.
Good.
And yeah, I'm glad to be here with you, my brother. Thank you so much, always for having me.
My pleasure. And the safe. Well, from where I live, the weather was good. How was the weather traveling to where you were going to?
Um, it gets dark early. It wa-
Yes.
it was 4 p.m. It was already dark.
Boy,
And it's driving between how do you call that, swamps and mountains on
swamps.
one. Yes, one is basically two lane and with trucks. So yeah, that's what I mean about driving here.
Wow. 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 How are things with you and family, sir?
The family is good. My daughter had a favorite holiday, aka Halloween. So
Oh, yes. Okay.
she
How was that?
she loves dressing up as a witch, but but if
I
she
won't
don't.
touch that.
But it's not really the witch part. It's just because she likes wearing nice dresses. She doesn't
Oh,
wear a witch dress at all. she
okay.
wears a
Okay.
she wears a
Okay.
princess she wears a princess dress, and then with the pointy hat she calls it a witch.
I I love that. That is so funny. That is so hilarious. That's good. And weather was good for trick or treating?
Yes, I don't so much do the door part. I stay inside and I give candies, but yes, I think they had a good time. They were gone for a while, and some friends in the neighborhood. So yeah.
Nice. I think that's really cool. Uh, Before we go to the break, we got two things we can talk about. So, one of the things that you wanted to talk about is this situation with Senator Don Meredith. And I know that that's something you wanted to talk about today. So, I said we could go like three or four stories back to back, but I said no. Let's talk about this first and give you a break and other stuff. So, talk about this story with Senator Don Meredith.
Yes, I just wanted to make sure that although it was absolutely not a planned topic for today, but I want no hypocrisy in not addressing, not mentioning that story, as notably Senator Meredith was truly uh, in Ottawa, in the province of Ontario, but truly nationally a black leader. We're talking the mid 2010s, notably him being nominated as a black senator by the Conservative Party. So indeed, he did get close to black organizations such as the one where I was previously president, Caribbean Union of Canada. And I did remove the photos that I had with him, notably on Facebook, because, like I said, no hypocrisy. But the scandal and elements that were revealed regarding his tenure of his office in Ottawa as a senator really made it that we did have to take our distances. Uh, many people, had to take the distances because of what was being revealed in the news. And as I'm saying, no hypocrisy. Indeed, he has been found not guilty, as for those who read the article, the judge found the testimony of the complainant unreliable. However, it is important to mention that he was found to have misbehaved in ways that were not just unethical, but quite unethical as a senator. And we must not forget Senator Meredith. I can't remember his specific title, but he's a man of the church. Can't remember if he's pastor or bishop, whichever it is.
Mhm.
In many ways, that makes it that much more worse. And on a third level, or maybe even a deeper level, as a husband. So he is very fortunate to have been able to have his wife stay by his side. But let us not be hypocritical in denying that indeed. Um, I don't want to say we had hopes on the brother, Senator Meredith, but it is always a deception to see a black person, man or woman, having some preeminence in the public stage and yet have such a downfall, notably of sexual nature, of any nature, of course, but sexual nature always speaks more to the individual. Um, per se. And of course, him being a religious man, him being a married man. But of course, it's a deception for the black community. Not guilty, but definitely misbehaved. I was not there. I've never talked to anyone who was involved. That is not even the question here. But according to the newspaper article, that's what happens.
Y- I want to talk about this a little bit. I don't want to go too much. I know we got other conversation topics, but it just, first of all, this is 8 years old now. It's been a long time. And I think it also signifies, if you are people who have skin color like us, we have to be careful how we carry ourselves. Let me just put it that way.
Hmm.
You know, because there will always be, from my just my lens, there's always people who are looking to get us. Let me just put it that way. There are some people, not all, a lot of people. There can be people, and I just want to, especially from a black male perspective, you and I are black men. Um, we always have to have our periscope up. Let me put it that way.
Even more because, of course, we talk about systemic racism, we talk about the, slavery and colonization and negative portrayals of Black people, and especially of Black men. But, you know, need to be careful becomes that much more prevalent when you get the privilege of being elevated to a position of public office, a position of public image.
Mhm.
Uh, Look, there is such a thing as false accusations. Yes, there are men who are victims of false accusation, absolutely. But let us not be dishonest here.
Go-
Most women, but also men, let's not be hypocrite, men can be victims too. Most complainants are not lying.
True.
Most complainants are not lying. We
True.
have to be able to recognize the victimization of women, whether they be black, white, indigenous, you name it, but also whether it be a man, an LGBTQ, or at the very least, any complaint must be addressed seriously. And in that serious nature, we cannot pretend to be blind or deaf, notably when we have no factual way of denying the accusations against someone. Of course, black men have been falsely portrayed. I mean, just yesterday, some white supremacists talking about uh, our hero, Brother Martin Luther King, being sexually abusing white women, etc., basically repeating lies and defamation made by J. Edgar Hoover to bring down Brother Martin Luther King during the civil rights era.
Hmm. Hmm.
But not every black person is an MLK or a victim of some misinformation or fabrication, etc., etc. So, in the case of Senator Meredith, It's important to mention because many people also were convinced he was guilty. He has been found not guilty. So, indeed, he may not have committed the sexual assault as per the judgment that was rendered. And we have to recognize that. But we also have to read the whole article, which does inform that indeed he did misbehave in his office, notably creating a toxic environment. Um, and these are things that are addressed. I mean, I just posted on Friday, I believe, or maybe Thursday, I posted about psychological safety. These are topics that are addressed professionally in different offices, such as here, where I am in Northern Ontario, to public servants in terms of the behavior and the consequences of the behavior. As Black people, and notably Black men, we cannot pretend, even if, and this is very important because this kind of goes back to the case of P. Diddy and R. Kelly, even when too many of our brothers think that abusing, mistreating, aka targeting Black girls and Black women will not be taken as seriously. It is true, we must address the fact that Black women as victims, and Black men as victims, of course, are not taken as seriously as their white counterparts, but we must not give an excuse to those who target our brothers and sisters in more vulnerable positions. We must not shield them and we must not give them a pass. That would be betraying our Pan Africanism, our sense of the Black community, and truthfully, that would just be betraying our very humanity itself.
Well said. I'll just bring up a real quick topic I'm going to be talking about a little bit later on the show, Black Men Can Talk, but the devastation that's happened to many parts of Jamaica after Hurricane Melissa has hit. They, there are parts, and that's my heritage, Jamaica. There are many parts of Jamaica that are devastated. I mean,
Absolutely.
devastated. And just want to shout out that if you can contribute, make sure you find a reputable organization. If you want to contribute, our family is going to be sending down stuff in barrels in the next 2 weeks there. If you are up to it, please feel free to contribute to the efforts. But it's our family home. We got water in it, but then I have my uncle, one of my uncles who lives across the street from us down in Montego Bay. His roof was blown out and blown off, and all the windows of his house totally destroyed. So I just wanted to add that before we go to break.
Thank you. All my solidarity to our Jamaican people and also Jamaicans of the diaspora. Earlier this week, I think it was Tuesday, we had a meeting of the United Nations for the Permanent Forum for People of African Descent. And indeed, the fate of Jamaica was brought forward in light of this incoming. So this was just before Melissa did landfall. So indeed, lots of brothers and sisters from around the world were sharing the solidarity for Jamaica.
Anything of positive will help, even prayer. So we can take, because this is going to take a generation to rebuild. And there are some people that, well, there's just one or two of the members of our family. We finally got in contact with them this week to find out if they were okay. I'll
I
leave it
hope
at that.
everybody gets okay. Yes.
No problem. We're going to take a quick little break. When we come back, we'll do some housekeeping and we'll get into some more conversations on Black Canada Talking with Cesar Ndema-Moussa.
Watch Primetime Saturdays on Saturdays 5 p.m. Eastern, where Aisha K. Staggers and Laura Lala Key try to make sense of the nonsense in American politics and culture.
Okay, we are back on Black Canada Talking. Cesar just gotten up from it, but he is sat back down. No worries about that, Cesar. So let's do some housekeeping. Subscribe to the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube and hit the notification button. So not only subscribe, but hit the notification. Subscribe is great, but also hit the notification so you get notified of upcoming epic conversations. We're getting very, very close to 2,000 subscribers. And believe it or not, only 10% of all YouTube channels have over 1,000 subscribers. So there are people who watch who haven't subscribed yet. If you are up to it, please feel free to subscribe. Tell other people about it. Also, follow the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, and Substack. If you want to advertise your business, product, or service on any of the platforms that I show up on, feel free to email me, dr.vibe at the drvibeshow.com. Also, Indie Soup TV, which is powered by a good friend, Dr. Tachi out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Independent Content Creators Network has over 28,000 subscribers in about 20 months of operation. And remember, only 4% of all YouTube channels have over 10,000 subscribers. So we keep on pushing. And also, if you want to get in touch with Cesar, email address is president@rootsandculturecanada.com, and there's his Facebook handle, Cesar Remy Emery. And I think we have covered everything we need before we get into our first conversation piece. So also too, if you're watching this live or on the replay, if you can swipe the QR code that is above our heads to probably your left, my right, and that will get you direct for me. It'll take you to a link to find out more about me, including contact information. And for Cesar, it will take you to his Facebook address. So let's talk about our first conversation piece of democracy in Africa, Cameroon, Cote d'Ivoire, but specifically Tanzania. Cesar, kick it off.
Well, Dr. Vibe, it's eventually we need to have a conversation in terms of, is democracy fit for Africa? And the reason I say this is, without going too far into democracy for itself, we tend to have too much the view of democracy from the Greek lens, aka the Western lens. But for those who don't know, democracy technically did not start in Greece. The term indeed comes from Greece because, Western domination and blah, blah, blah. But there were examples of democracy in Asia, in North America, or in the Americas, I should just say, and in Africa, completely disconnected from the Greek model. However, as we see Africa right now, I'm talking 2025, November 2nd, Africa has the youngest president in the world. If I'm not mistaken, the president of Senegal. Africa also has the oldest president in the world, my own birth country of Cameroon, in which the president, Paul Biya, has been reelected with much controversy, no surprise, but is expected to be in power until age 99. And I mean, I can go on with many other examples, such as Africa is a continent that has the most president in interracial relationships, aka black presidents, talking about the impact of colonization, racism, etc. And yet many of them have white wives who literally come from the country of the former colonizer. However, here we have in Cote d'Ivoire a president who got reelected, um, with a Soviet score, 89%, with much contest. Is quite unrealistic, especially if you look at the state of the country. As I said, Cameroon, oldest president, re-elected at 92 years old, my birth country, and it is very unfortunate in light of everything that happens over there, the degradation of security and the protests that are happening in which people are being killed. But a far more extreme example is what's happening in Tanzania. Now, 2 weeks ago on the last show, we were talking about global protests, notably in Africa with Generation Z. And in Tanzania, what has happened is that the Tanzania having elected its first female president, Samia Suluhu Hassan, um, it's quite dishonorable what has been happening to the land of our hero, Julius Nyerere, because the first female president is arguably becoming, I'm saying becoming, I'm not Tanzanian, and I haven't had the honor to visit Tanzania itself, but seemingly the first female president of Tanzania is also becoming the first female dictator of Africa. I'm saying of Africa because there have been female dictators before. So those who want to make the argument, notably feminists, that women should have power, they will rule differently than men. That's absolutely not true. Power corrupts, absolutely. Power absolutely corrupts, and it doesn't matter the gender. The repression of political opponents, from jailing them to cutting off the internet to, I was reading a report talking about protests, like not just sending the police, but even the army having killed up to, if not more than 700 people. It is tragic what's happening there. And young people, aka Generation Z, those born, I think Generation Z is 19, those born between 1996 and 2011 or 2015, aka generation that has known the internet its whole existence. They're at the forefront of the protest for democracy. Now, I don't want so much to stress on democracy, as I was saying from the beginning, from a Western lens, but Generation Z protests worldwide. In Africa, we notably think of, for example, Morocco, Madagascar. Those protests are mainly against corruption from the elites, but also the unequal wealth redistribution that is increasing inequalities. Very much as one of our coming topics regarding inequalities, such as in the United States, the rich getting richer, the poor getting poorer, and the middle class shrinking, if you even really have a middle class. And in Africa, we know such a thing as a middle class. On the four corners of Africa, a middle class is a relative notion, but it keeps shrinking. So right now, I mean, it's one thing to know that the party that was in power, uh, the CCM, basically a party of the revolution, and if I'm not mistaken, it's the party that has been the longest in power in Africa, basically since 1961 or 1962, if I recall my reading. Uh, the surprise was not of them winning the elections, aka being re-elected. It's the way by which they went about to do it, so with such harsh repression of opponents. So I'm just inviting our people to keep Tanzania on the mind, as when you look at the situation that's growing, notably in Eastern Africa, and not just Eastern Africa, all over Africa, but in Eastern Africa, from Sudan, and the situation of Eastern Congo, and now we're having Tanzania, and you go a little bit further, Madagascar, the situations tend to not get better. Madagascar, we can argue, got better with the military regime that has taken power with the blessing of the people. But in Tanzania, we have a quickly evolving and deteriorating situation in which people are dying, not so much for democracy, but against corruption, against unequal redistribution of wealth, against government restriction slash cutting off the internet and social media in order to maintain power, authoritarian power, and in this case, with a female leader, Africa's Tanzania's first female president, who might become Tanzania's first or Africa's first female dictator. And she has some interesting points. I recall, I think, reading about how she wanted to make education entirely free, but you can't do that if you're also oppressing people. It's a contradiction.
Mm. I want to ask you, you mentioned at the front end of your commentary about the time is coming to have a conversation with democracy in Africa.
Mhm.
What is your reason for saying that it's something we need to address sooner rather than later?
We live in a critical stage, and this connects to many conversations that we've had. We are in 2025. Our statistics speak of an African demographic boom. Studies from um, many census and scientists are coming to admit that they likely have underestimated the global population, notably by minimizing the importance of rural population. We know Africa has a large rural population, and Africa has the youngest population in the world. The addressing of democracy is not at all in terms of how many people may understand it in terms of the Western lens, democratia from Greece. No, I'm talking here about socioeconomics, but also identity. I'm talking about security. I'm talking about Black consciousness in the sense in which when we have failed governments, it opens the door wide for many of the catastrophes that are plaguing the continent. Islamic extremism, but also growing Christian charlatanism is growing also the fact of so much alienation. So many Africans are now claiming to be Jewish. They're not Jewish. The state of Israel knows they're not Jewish, but they're trying to escape poverty because the alternative for many is either to become criminals or to go try to go across the Mediterranean Sea with all the dangers that come with it and thousands dying. I mean, in Nigeria, you have, and I'm sorry for many of our Nigerian brothers and sisters who may be offended by this, but they know I speak the truth. You have a culture for many people, not for everyone, for many people, a culture of celebration of not just hustling, but outright scamming.
Mhm.
Outright scamming. But these phenomenons only occur because of failures of the state, failures of wealth redistribution, failures of people. Our great leader Madiba, yes, hero of the fight against apartheid, first black president of South Africa. But when his term ended, he left power. He left power. He didn't take advantage of, hey, I am Mandela. I did 27 years in jail. You know what? I love power. I'm just going to stay on. When we have leaders who claim democracy, who claim, a very common expression in Africa, in many countries, they don't have presidents. They have presidents slash dictators. The title is president, but just as we're seeing right now in a certain nation called America, the title is president, but the the ruling behavior is more fitting of dictatorship. When Africa or if African nations keep failing, again, when I say democracy, I'm not forget Greece and Rome and the West. When African nations fail in better governance, let me give you a very concrete example, Dr. Vibe, very concrete. And I'm not embarrassed, but it is embarrassing. How many people know and would find it normal to know that the African Union, headquarters in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, as um, truly, I mean, people like to say Ethiopia and Liberia were not colonized. It's a bit more complicated, but the African Union is funded, if I'm not mistaken, up to 75% by the European Union. Allow me to repeat, the African Union, born out of the fight of colonization to steer the continent to the next century of independence and everything you want, take Africa to be on par and rise from the ashes of slavery and colonization and, the harms of globalization and you name it, systemic racism. The African Union is funded up to 70 to 75% by the European Union. That is problematic. That is problematic. Ah, we lost Dr. Vibe for a
What's
moment.
the
I'll
reason
turn it
for
to
it being
speech.
no,
Sorry?
what is the reason for that? What is that be what's the reason for that being problematic?
That means you're not independent. It's like saying you're an adult, and the problem is not even so much that you're an adult will still live in the parent's home, but you're an adult who lives in the parent's home and you still require your parents' money to go on a date, to feed yourself, to clothe yourself. You're an adult by title because you're over 18. You're an adult maybe because you look like an adult, maybe because you grew a beard, but you're not an adult per se in terms of what is expected of an adult. We cannot have a European Union which, for all its flaws, is not being financed, whether it be by the Americans, the Chinese. I mean, the European Union have their own flaws, and for those with, without going too deep, let me summarize the three main flaws of the European Union. It will be very simple and straight to the point. The European Union three main flaws, besides for the architecture, but this is really Europe and the European Union. So England is not in the European Union, but it fits into what I'm going to say. The European Union and the European continent as a whole, cheap energy from Russia, cheap goods from China, and expectation of military defense from the USA. The mess that you see happening right now with Putin and Ukraine and all the thousands of people, because it's really thousands of soldiers dying every week. Donald Trump is not wrong when he says a lot of people are dying. It's true. And by a lot of people, a lot of Africans are dying because Russia is recruiting and sometimes tricking Africans in being put in the army and being sent in the front lines. So that mess that's happening is because of the failures of the European Union. However, how can we have an African Union that's supposed to stand for the continent, stand for the race? And when I say race, that's including Haiti, Jamaica, Barbados, etc. If its funding is coming from the former slave masters and former colonizers. I mean, we're talking here yesterday. Yesterday, I was at my mother's home, and there was my mother is a retired teacher, and there was another teacher. She's from Guinea. Dr. Vibe, I had to ask her which Guinea. Have you ever asked anyone which Canada they're from? No, I had to ask which Guinea. Why? There are three countries named Guinea in Africa. There are three countries named Guinea in Africa as a result of colonization. There are two countries named Congo in Africa as a result of colonization. And one of the Congos, the capital city, is named after the lead colonizer who was also a pedophile and rapist of black children. Savognon de Brazza. Congo Brazzaville is named after a known pedophile rapist of black children. To what extent can we have an African Union? And I am not bashing the African Union saying it's useless. Please don't get me wrong. I've already addressed the African Union, being at the United Nations. I've already put my recommendations. The African Union has a great plan called Project 2063, aka for the 100 years of the African Union, which I support, but also have criticized, notably in regards to rights of girls, women, and LGBTQ black people, and notably addressing the impact and harm of Christianity and Islam upon black youth and black adults, which the African Union, by default of colonization, Islam from the Arab Muslims since the 7th century, and Christianity not since colonization in the 19th century, but truly since slavery in the 15th century, the African Union refuses to address the harms of religion, and yet, as we will talk a little bit later on, we see how religious conflicts that began in other continents, they're killing innocent Africans.
Enough said. All right, let's move to our next conversation piece. And it's never seeming to leave immigration and refugee status in America. Your thoughts on that, Cesar, at this time in the world?
And it's very much a continuation of what we were talking about because having Donald Trump want to change the refugee numbers, aka bring down from 125,000 under Joe Biden to 7,500 in Trump 2.0. So, an important thing to understand is that the previous lowest number of uh, refugee claimants to be allowed to enter the United States was 15,000, and that was under Trump first term in 2018, if I recall. 2018 or maybe 2021. I'm going to say 2018. This is a continuation of America, but truly the Americas, because from Canada to Brazil and Argentina, this is a policy of whitewashing the population. In Brazil, it was called blanqueamento, aka bringing in white migrants. So Trump called them refugees. Refugees from where? The hypocrisy is to claim there's white genocide happening in South Africa because the South African government of Cyril Ramaphosa, the ANC, ordered land redistribution and notably land seizures. But these policies were indiscriminate of race. However, it is important for people to understand that whites in South Africa, the power position is inherited from apartheid as a result of colonization since, if I'm not mistaken, the early 1600s, and the taking of lands from black farmers concentrated into the hands of whites will represent, if I'm not mistaken, 7 to 8% of South African population compared to blacks who are, I'm going to say 75 to 80%. And in between, you have basically Asians, Indians, and etc. You literally have Trump and his administration, because it didn't just come from him. We know this very policy of giving refugee status to white. I mean, I'm saying white. Afrikaners are white. You cannot be black and Afrikaner. It doesn't exist. And those who tell you it exists, it's like telling someone, you know, uh, what's his name? Dave Chappelle, black white supremacist, that you're a known black person in the KKK. That's a lie. It doesn't exist. Black, Jewish, LGBTQ in the KKK, Muslim in the KKK, doesn't exist. So Afrikaners are white descendants of Dutch, British, and French colonization in what we shouldn't even call South Africa, because obviously the locals did not call the land South Africa. It's a white colonial name. But this white genocide notion comes from the influence of Elon Musk and J.D. Vance's mentor, Peter Thiel. They're both from South Africa, billionaire South Africans with much influence on the Trump government, aka money talks. And when you look at, for example, the other group that would be welcome, because Trump made it clear the preference would be given to those more likely to fit in with America, but more likely to fit in, understanding white, Christian, etc., you name it. The other group are white dissidents of the statu quo, such as in Germany, and you have white members of the the far right party AFD, Alternative for Deutschland, so Alternative for Germany, under claims that the German government oppresses white supremacists, and as such, they will be welcome as refugees in America. One last point is that beyond the obvious racist overtone of this, no matter how the Trump administration tries to play it, I mean, let's not forget this is the same Trump administration that had the Muslim ban, and the Trump administration that talked about Africa as shithole countries. The same Trump administration, candidate Trump, that referred to Haitians as eating cats and dogs. The examples are many, no matter how notably Black MAGA want to show a photo of Trump decades ago with Rosa Parks and Muhammad Ali to claim he's not racist. The man is. It's not a secret. But at the same time, this is a reflection of America which through many policies, whether it will be on Chinese people, even Jewish people, Jewish, Irish, Italians were not considered white at a certain time, um, and when you look at even during World War II, ships that had Jewish people were turned away. There was a famous case, I think the ship's name was the St. Louis, if I recall. And this ship was turned away from Canada and the United States and had to return to Europe, where many, if not all, occupants ended up being killed in the concentration slash gas camps, death camps. So this is a continuation of policies by the United States, but we are in 2025, not in 1925. uh, Most people may not know this, but until the, if I'm not mistaken, late 60s, and thanks to the fight of our brothers and sisters, African Americans, during civil rights, until the mid to late 60s, Dr. Vibe, you will have Jamaican roots, me born in Cameroon, we were not allowed to come to Canada and the United States unless you were a diplomat or unless you were, as Barack Obama's father, considered a special gifted student, etc., etc. But immigration per se, refugee status per se, you Caribbean, you African, North America, and truly the Americas were close to you.
Let me ask, like when you hear things of what 47 is doing, only eliminating 7,500 people, what does that tell you about America? And because this story's gone under the radar, not a lot of people are talking about it.
Hmm. Well, remember that protest when I think it was in 2016? I think Charlottesville protest when they were walking with the tiki torches, you will not replace us. It's the same thing as, back in the 19th century when the governments of the Americas, Canada included, all the way down to Brazil and Argentina, had selective white Christian immigration. Yes, they did welcome some Jewish people, they did, but it was overwhelmingly selective white Christian immigration. Let's not be hypocritic. It is understandable in the sense in which those who share common values are more likely to ease the integration. But this is not truly the sense here. There is a radical white supremacist intent here, notably as it has been spread in white supremacy circles, as I notably uh, deal present on those pages, and I tackle directly white supremacists, the notion of the white race risking to be replaced, eliminated. People have heard about the great replacement theory, and as such, the fear of not only the demographic increase of non white, especially blacks, but also Muslim, but also the perception of some type of demonic, I'm using the words that they use, demonic satanic plan from Jewish people to have black men reproduce with white women. This goes back to I mean, in the times of Hitler, this was already popular in the Nazi mindset. But then you have another element, which is, and this is something Donald Trump notably talked about, which is the defense of Christianity. Christianity being the most persecuted religion in the world, and Trump notably talking about how he told Hegseth to go guns blazing in the protection of Nigerian Christians who are being indeed attacked and killed by Muslim extremists. It is absolutely true. And Dr. Vibe, I've talked about this on the show before. Um, Attacks on Christians must be denounced. Yes, Christians are being killed. Some Christians, not all over, but some Christians are being killed in Africa, uh, generally in the area. If you look at a map of religion in Africa, it's in the area where Islam and Christianity meet because it's a continuation of the white Arab Muslims versus the white European Christians religious wars. That's what they're having in Africa. But my question to Mr. Trump would be this one. When he's talking about the 7,500 refugee limit allowed in America, will that include those Nigerian Christians? Will that include those Nigerian Christians? Because they're being killed. Those Afrikaners, those white South Africaners, African farmers, they're not being killed. Oh, yes, please, there is some killing. Let's not be hypocrite. I keep saying that. But in South Africa, farmers, it's not just white farmers who are being killed, black farmers are also being killed. But in Nigeria, it is only black Christians who are being killed. It is poor Nigerians who are being killed by those Muslim extremists.
Okay. Some comments here. And was from earlier on. Larry says, greetings, gentlemen. There's one aspect of immigration that's not discussed. First Nations communities in the US and Canada are seeking the return of their land. And he also says, I predict that much of the land in Canada and the US will gradually be returned to various First Nation communities across North America.
Unfortunately, I have to disagree. Now, but first, let me thank Brother Larry for bringing that comment because indeed it is a very valid point. But the reason I'm disagreeing, and we can see that right now. So let's talk first about Canada. The very conversation of Trump's tariffs has forced a conversation on Canada internal trade. But one of the roadblocks, if we can put it that way, and I'm giving here a white leadership lens here, is how indigenous considerations are being taken into account. And you can see the conservatives of Pierre Poilievre are literally rejecting what the liberals of Trudeau and now Carney have given much consideration to indigenous rights. So conservatives coming to power just want to wash that away. 100% development of Canada. Too bad about indigenous land rights. Yeah, it can go to the Supreme Court. How many indigenous judges are on the Supreme Court? How many indigenous judges are on the superior courts? How many indigenous judges are on the federal courts, municipal courts? We can go down the list. In the US, that's where I think, but please don't get me wrong, there will be some consideration given to indigenous people in Canada. But when we see one of the criticism of I think the AFN, the Assembly of First Nation Leaders, when Prime Minister Carney released his Canada's reconstruction, the big plans, the big infrastructure plans, was that they were not consulted. So you see, there's already that effect right in Canada. In the US, I absolutely don't see Donald Trump caring about indigenous rights. It's literally, I think it was called the Walk of Tears when indigenous people in the US were being forced to migrate and many thousands were killed. I totally see that happening. This MAGA president and the MAGA crowd absolutely will not care about indigenous land if they want to see any type of development, and notably in terms of immigration, if they want to bring in, 7,500 white supremacists, because that's really what it is. Afrikaners are white supremacists. You don't choose your identity, but you choose to remain in it. When it comes to something ideological as being Afrikaners or being in Germany part of the AFD party. So yeah.
Okay. Good stuff. All right. What we're going to do is we're going to take a quick break and we'll come up with our last conversation piece for Cesar. So keep it tight on Black Canada Talking.
You are watching Black Canada Talking, where Cesar Ndema-Moussa gives his takes and POVs on stories that are of importance to Black Canadians. Stay tuned.
All right, we are back with Cesar, and we're going to close it off with what's going on in the United States. What else is new? The government shut down SNAP benefits. a lot of people there, that's what they call food stamps, and just and amplifying the politics, the inequality of wealth, etc. in America. And before we kick it off, one of the things that gets me about the SNAP benefits, Cesar, excuse me, is that about 42 million Americans receive these benefits. So that's basically one out of every seven Americans is
That's
getting.
a Canadian issue.
What does that tell you? I know you have more to say, but what does that fact tell you about America right now?
Me to quote one of my friends. I'm not gonna name him, but one of my friends. He's white with African ancestry. He's a businessman, travels often to the United States, and he told me something that I should have known, but the fact he said it and it impacted me. He said, contrary to what we see and what we hear, the United States is the richest third world country in the world.
Interesting take.
The richest and most powerful, you name it. You're talking about, America, such Americans like Trump like to remind you that it's the richest, most powerful country that has ever existed. If I'm not mistaken, it's up to 25% of children in America, in the United States, live under the poverty line. When you look at the SNAP, so the Supplemental Nutritional Aid Program, 42 million people benefiting of it. That's literally the population of Canada.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right there. You're right.
And if you look at the numbers quantitatively, surprise, surprise, it's overwhelmingly whites who are majority of the beneficiaries of the SNAP benefits. However, and again, let us not be hypocritical, if you look at it proportionately, blacks, notably black single mothers, are highly represented.
Yeah.
But that's not a surprise because although being 13%, 14% of the population, the nature of systemic racism, but also of politics, make it that poverty is a systemic issue in the United States. When I say systemic issue, let us not just talk about black people for a minute. Let me ask a question that I've often asked many times before, and which, if I were a journalist in the United States, Dr. Vibe, you may remember, I think it was in the beginning of the 2000s, those late night TV show men like Jay Leno, they used to have a segment where they go on the street and they ask questions to people and laugh at the ignorance, the lack of intellect, etc. You name it, right? Lack of knowledge on things that they should know. I would love for people, for journalists to have the courage to ask. Many of those who are now crying because of the loss of SNAP benefits, but also many of those, such as air traffic controllers, but also veterans, military, you name it, who are not getting a paycheck. Did you vote for Donald Trump?
Mm, mm, mm.
Did you vote for Donald Trump? We know many did. When I say poverty is a systemic issue, poverty is man created. As our great hero and leader, Madiba, Nelson Mandela, used to say, poverty is a man's creation and therefore it's a man's solution. But when you look at notably southern states, you have majority of whites who are voting for the Republicans will always make sure to steal money from the poor in order to get the rich richer, such as we saw this year with Donald Trump's big ugly bill. And this is part of the reason the big ugly bill, and notably the aspect of healthcare, Medicare, Medicaid. This is part of the reason why you end up having the government shut down, because the Republicans try to frame it in terms of which the Democrats, and again, for those who don't know, I am not a Democrat, I am not a Republican, I absolutely don't align on the left right lens of Western politics. I'm a Pan Africanist, period. However, the government shutdown not just about healthcare, but in terms of economics, is what directly leads to this situation in regards to the impact of SNAP benefits. So 42 million people affected. How many of them voted for Donald Trump? How many of them voted against the best interest because they had an issue with the other side valuing pronouns, because they had an issue with the other side valuing EDI, DEI, because they had an issue with the other side talking about some human rights for even illegal immigrants? The Republicans have once again fooled the voters and they're feeling the pain of it. So, in the words of Charlie Kirk, the MAGA martyr, as they try to elevate him, Jesus reborn and murdered, should we have sympathy for Trump voters who are complaining about losing on the SNAP benefits? Should there be sympathy to people who did not care that this man was quite okay with sexually assaulting women, aka grab them by the P word, and a man was very much okay with insulting and barraging black women, from Kamala Mamala to the black woman journalist, and basically any black woman, such as Jasmine Crockett, it doesn't matter. These people who voted for Trump and were complaining about SNAP benefits and healthcare, and yet had no problem with Trump talking about our Haitian brothers and sisters, aka the flame of Pan Africanism since 1804, but even before 1804, since 1791, the Haitian Revolution. They didn't have a problem with him calling them, claiming that they eat cats and dogs, and him talking, as we're talking about immigration, they poison the blood of our country. They didn't have a problem with him talking about Africa as shithole. They didn't have a problem with Donald Trump committing the insurrection of January 6, 2021. Should we have sympathy for Trump voters who are affected by the SNAP bill and the healthcare situation? I mean, this is a construction. These are people who literally voted against their own interests knowingly. And you can't blame Trump for this. I look at black people who, notably black men who are MAGA. I mean, there are four black congressmen and one black Republican senator. They were all minions of Trump and MAGA defending him for anything and everything. What position did they get in Trump's administration? What
Not,
position?
nothing to my knowledge.
Nothing. And even what's his name? Brown Valhalla wannabe guy. What's his name? Patel.
Cash
Kash
Patel.
Patel.
Cash Patel.
Yeah, he gets reminded. He suffers racism even in his own party because he doesn't fit in. He doesn't fit in. He's a brown guy. He's of Indian descent. They don't care that he might be Christian. They don't care that he's born in the US. They don't care that he went to American. No, 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 no. He doesn't fit in. In the same way as we're seeing, what's his name? Vice President J.D. Vance.
Mm-hmm.
Those photos and those talks online about him getting a little bit too cozy with the widow of Charlie Kirk, Erica Kirk, and talks about him planning to likely divorce his brown Hindu wife and mother of his children.
There's rumors of that.
Oh yeah, yeah. And for him to eventually get with Erica Kirk, as she's obviously former Miss, I don't know, Arizona, whatever it is that she is, she's more fitting of the MAGA image, and notably for him to want to increase his odds and chances for 2028 to take over the movement because Trump might not be there in 2028. More and more people are talking about he might have dementia. When he talks about acing those IQ tests, he's not doing IQ tests. He's doing tests for dementia and other mental health diseases. That's what he's doing. Those are not IQ tests where you're being asked to recognize a giraffe or some animal. Those are not IQ tests. But again, because we were talking about SNAP benefits, you have all these Trump voters who, because of their own racism, because that's what it is, it's the same reason why they cannot see or they won't see that Charlie Kirk was a racist, was a bigot, etc. They won't see it because they are the same. And then you have those um, alienated blacks who are so desperate to be accepted into whiteness that they end up espousing the very same views of white Christian nationalists. They're voting against their own interests. So again, I ask a question. Should we feel sympathy for Trump voters who are complaining about the SNAP benefits, who are complaining about Medicare and Medicaid, about the health care, about the cost of life? As Barack Obama said, I think it was this weekend actually, or a few days this week, as Barack Obama said, yes, there are people who voted for Trump because they were complaining about the cost of life, because they were frustrated at politics, because of what in principle seems like legitimate reason. 9 months later, has that improved? Have the tariffs actually made the cost of living better?
Not from what I see, but they say you got it's a long run thing and things will eventually get to better. But my concern is that isn't helping the average everyday American right now.
That is not happening to the average American. And for Americans who will basically claim they don't trust the media, Donald Trump was in Asia going to make a truce with the Chinese leader Xi Jinping. If you need to go on the other side of the world to go make a truce with the so-called enemy, you are admitting that you lost. You are admitting, and we know Donald Trump is a champion of reframing the rhetoric. I have the highest numbers in history. I'm more Yeah, the truth is that he's tanking. His approval rating is tanking. It's not just Marjorie Taylor Greene. Even Republican congressmen and senators are raising rose against him, wanting them to use a filibuster to
Yeah.
end the government shutdown because they realize if they do it, the Democrats will also do it to them. I mean, if the Democrats can start being pathetically weak and thinking that they're morally superior when they come back to power. So this is literally the question. Oh, yeah, it's not benefits. Oh, that's unfortunate. As I always say, Dr. Vibe, whether we talk about Trump, Charlie Kirk, um, gun violence, school shootings, politics, economy, you name it, I always draw the line at children.
Mm,
Children are
yeah.
innocent.
Yep.
But my question is this: those Trump voters, how much did you love your children when you voted for Trump and now you're wondering how you're going to feed your kids?
Mm,
Because I know that black single mother, she most likely didn't vote for Trump. Black women voted at over 90% against Trump. Black women are the most consistent voting group. And second is black men. Oh, yeah, Trump got the most votes he got from black men, 18-20%, meaning 80 to 82% of black men voted against Trump. We, as a community, as a race, our African Americans, our Caribbean Americans, I have to say, Black Americans from the African continent are consistent in voting against white supremacy. So it's not that Black single mother will may have 4, 5, 6 kids from 2, 3, 4, 10 husbands or 10 boyfriends. I'm just using the common racist white supremacy trope that they like throwing at our people. African Americans. She did not vote for Trump. She has my sympathy. She is being a victim of the politics of wealth, the same politics where Elon Musk is forcing the board of Tesla to make him a trillionaire. Under what logic is this happening in which we know Tesla and SpaceX, most of the wealth of Elon Musk comes from government subsidies? Meanwhile, in the richest, most powerful country on earth, 25 to 30% of children live under the poverty line. And yet they look at Africa, they look at India, they look at Latin America, they look at many countries in the Arab Middle East world, and they laugh at them claiming poverty when the poverty is right there in the United States. When the rich get richer and richer. Look at the members of Congress and the Senate. How many millionaires are there? And they're supposed to represent the people? This administration is the richest administration by the net worth of its members. An administration full of billionaires, even more than the first Trump administration. How are they supposed to represent the people?
It's a good
Trump
question.
was talking about groceries, dolls, and all that stuff. What does he know about it? Other than for a photo op.
Yeah.
Again, should we have sympathy for Trump voters? I have sympathy for that black single mother. I have sympathy for my brother, black man, doing 2 or 3 jobs to feed the family. I have sympathy for that white ally who may not agree with everything with the Democratic Party, but had the courage, the honesty to not vote for an openly racist, openly sexist, openly, you name it, negative man who had already been in power, who had already shown his style, and yet, so many people chose to vote for him again.
I think we'll end it on that note today, Cesar. Good commentary and strong as always. Okay. Not gonna pay attention to that. So what we're gonna do is this. As always, I want to say thank you, as always, Cesar, for taking the most valuable thing, your time, to hang out with us. I know you had a long drive to where you got to, but you are committed to doing this, and we appreciate that. We don't
It's
take
for
it.
the people. It's for the people.
As always, if you want to get in touch with Cesar, email president@rootsandculturecanada.com, Facebook, Cesar Remy Emery. A little bit of housekeeping here. If you want to subscribe to the Dr. Vibe Show, please do. On YouTube, subscribe and hit the notification button so you'll not only be able to see, but you'll get notified of upcoming conversations. Also, too, follow me on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, and Substack. If you want to advertise any of your business product or service on the platform, email me dr.vibe at the drvibeshow.com. If you want to find out more about myself, there's a link right there. toplink.cc/the drvibeshow.com. And 2, you can watch replays of this epic conversation on the Dr. Vibe Show on YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and my website, the drvibeshow.com. So we close it out in this way. Oh, and want to say hello. It's Caslu. Good to see you, Casu. Good to see you as always. Thank you for your support. So as always, this is how we close it out. Live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Sometimes you have to get smaller to get stronger. Block assumptions. Aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. Love, faith, and respect. Don't just manage your time, manage your energy. Remember to give yourself grace. And if you're not making money, make history. Try to do both. And as always, make better. God bless. Peace to all. Keep the faith. Walk good. And Cesar, hope you travel back safe. And best to the family. Be well.
Do you mind if I say something quickly?
No, go ahead.
Congratulations to the Toronto Blue Jays for the fantastic run into the World Series. I am absolutely not a fan of baseball. I tried. I passed out in less than 5 minutes, but I just no. I mean, let's not be hypocritical here. Like I can't do baseball, but I want to congratulate the Blue Jays. But also, I want to congratulate the Los Angeles Dodgers and the players of Japanese origin. Shohei Otani and Yabu.
I can't pronounce the other
I
gentleman's
can't
name.
remember
We
yet,
all
but
know what you're talking
honestly,
about, though. Yeah.
I just read about it. I would just see it at the gym. So honestly, congratulations to everyone. Ye Savage, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. Congratulations to all of them. Yeah.
And Cash Lou also puts up celebrate emojis also. All right. So as always, God bless. Peace to all. Keep the faith while good, and we'll catch you soon. Stay safe.
Just take a quick moment.
Yeah.
You just introduce yourself. Let Dr. Vibe welcome you into the show. As I told
Oh.
you, Dr. Vibe.
No. I welcome and really good to have you here. I didn't want to. You were on a roll. I didn't want to interrupt. You were on a roll, but
In an award created by whites, dominated by whites, run by whites. And you're a billionaire, bro. FYI, I don't. It's probably the first time of the year that I use the word bro.
yes, it is. That's the first time, as long as I've known you, you used it.
My daughter would laugh. if she heard me say bro.
But for many people, the economy ain't great. There we go. I saw that.